19. So the first order on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the May 2019 meetings. We didn't have an agenda for a June meeting. So any discussion about the minutes that you received from May? All right, if we don't have any discussion on the May minutes, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So moving down to the ground-mounted sign applications, the first one on our agenda is for the Great Clips over on Parkside Drive, Turkey Creek.
Okay, this is a small tenant panel that they're requesting approval of out there on Turkey Creek. It appears to be legible. It looks like it fits with the rest of the sign within reason, and staff didn't see any reason not to approve it.
Looks good to me.
It looks good to me.
Okay. Any discussion on the Great Clip sign? All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to
Motion.
approve.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so the next item is Knox Valley Dental on Kingston Pike, 11840.
Okay. This is a request for a ground sign at Knox Valley Dental. It's a tenant panel type ground sign. It's there. I think you're probably all familiar with the site. It's being built now across from the old Ingalls shopping center there. They're proposing a 50 square foot sign, approximately 10 foot by 5 foot. You know, maybe a little less than that if it's 9.8 by 5, but in that range. The sign is proposed to be located in the northeast corner of the property. Sorry about that. Right here. And the problem we identified when we reviewed the application is in order to have a sign of that size, the setback would have to exceed what's shown there. Unfortunately, when they measured the setback, they measured from out here at the curb line, and this is actually the property line here.
Oh,
This is the 20-foot setback line. This is a building that they moved forward on the site because of some issues on it. It was, part of the site planning process with the Planning Commission. So we discussed that with the sign designer. They would need to either reduce the size of the sign or push it back further on the lot, or a combination of both. There are some other sign options on that. They do have frontage on both Cheho Road and Kingston Pike, and Kingston Pike is an arterial. So they could conceivably, if they can separate them far enough, have two ground signs. They could also go with a smaller ground sign and some other options there. So from a staff perspective, we'd have to recommend denial of the plan as presented because of the setback violation. I think the owner's here. He might want to address you all, but the way it's designed now is it doesn't comply with the setback requirements there. The requirement is they can have up to a 60 square foot sign with a 20-foot setback, or they can have a 20 square foot sign with a 10-foot setback, and then they can get 2 additional square feet in area for each foot back behind 10 feet they go.
okay, you said 60 square feet. What was it? Say that one again.
Okay, so the way the regulation reads now is that for a ground sign like this, it's 60 square feet in size and 6 feet in height, with a 20-foot setback from the property line, from the front property line. But in this case, it's a corner lot, so they're both front lines. Or they can substitute a sign that's 20 square feet and 6 feet in height with a 10-foot setback, And then they can pick up an additional 2 foot of setback for each foot they go back, as long as they don't exceed 60.
Have you talked to them?
I've spoken to the sign designer. We went over a couple of the options, but the owner wanted to, request approval of this sign. So we left it on the agenda and brought it before y'all. But again, as designed, it does not meet the minimum setback requirements.
So we're happy to hear from the owner, but
Sure.
at this point in the regulation, we can't approve it as it is because the regulation doesn't allow.
Yeah, not from staff's perspective, no.
So you're the owner, sir?
Yes, correct.
If you'll mind to tell us your name and your,
Darren Zaveri, 317 Stone Oaks Drive. The reason why the property's up front is that's what the town requested.
right?
They wanted to see the building up front instead of parking lot. So that's how we designed it. Now, the other issue with that is the sign was originally 20 feet setback till the town decided to take 10 feet of my property. So with that being said, I think it's fair enough for me to use if the town didn't take the 10 feet, my sign would have been perfect.
Where's the 10 feet that the town took?
Where the original property line used to be,
Was the original property line
by the curb, yes.
at the curb? Okay.
The situation there is that's a longstanding town policy and procedure when they're dealing with subdivision plats and site plans. When a site is developed along a right-of-way that's got a substandard right-of-way in terms of what's required in the town's major road plan and the subdivision regulations. As part of the approval process, the applicant will dedicate the additional right-of-way to make that up, and that's been a long-standing town requirement and policy. So that's the case with a lot of sites in the town. There's a lot of right-of-way dedication that that's a part of site development when it's on a substandard road. So as part of the Planning Commission's action for approving this site plan, there was a replatting of the property and a dedication of the property line. That dedication moved the property line back, and we measured the setback from the current property line, not from what it was.
And so in the past with other sites,
always been
when this has happened and the town has taken a piece in the same manner as this, the property line setback or the setbacks from the property line for signage has always been from the new property
Yes, sir.
line, never from the old property line.
Yep.
So that's a long-standing
That's a long-standing,
precedent that's been set.
yeah, I mean, that's the way the Planning Commission reviews subdivision plats and site plans when the fronting roads do not, meet the standard right-of-way width for the classification of road, whether it's a local road, a collector road, an arterial road. There is a dedication requirement and a replatting of the property, and there are a number of sites that have done that. The mini storage or the self-storage that's going in up on North Campbell Station Road, they had to dedicate property. I think tire discounters probably had to dedicate some right-of-way. I'm not 100% sure of that. There's
Isn't
the small office that's there down near the Renaissance across from the Swan property that
I
was recently
understand
developed.
that, but thing is, like, after everything this was submitted during the planning commission time, and like, why now bring it up where I can't move the building back anymore? I mean, if I had known before I started everything, I could have pushed back a little bit more, but now I can't. Signage is important. I mean, like, how will people know going down Kings Pike, oh, this business exists here? I mean, I could put it on Cheho Road, but you think you can see the sign from Kingston Pike? I mean, no one will be able to see that, okay, this particular business exists here. I mean, for me, for a dental profession, they need to know, like, where the building is, where to enter and stuff like that. Oh, this practice is located here. Because if you go down Kingston Pike, there's so many offices. I mean, you can put it in Google, but if the people can't see it, then it's pointless.
Do you have plans to put any signage on the building?
I do, and I would run into issues with that too.
Yeah. We've
What issues?
Yeah, that's a separate issue. Wall signage doesn't typically come before y'all, but there's an issue that, again, we discussed with the architect on several occasions and regarding the way wall signage is allocated on buildings with shared entrances versus separate entrances. The architect was supposed to make a change to the entry plans to the different tenant spaces. It's not currently reflected on the building drawings. If they make that correction, then we'll be able to move forward with the type of signage that the owner wants to go forward with. If not, then they'll have the option if they want to use a shared entryway type system with the building.
Would the signage on the building be facing Kingston Pike?
It will be, yep.
Okay, so there will
And-
be some signage on the building for each of the tenants that are in that
Well,
building.
if they address the access problem or the way the wall signage provisions are set up on a multi-tenant space, there could be for each tenant. The other option is to have a building sign like Knox Valley Dental Building, and then directory signage. So again, there's multiple signage options for this property. I spoke to the people from Signco about that, and we can sit down and look at the different options and what it would take to get those different types of signage. But the way it's designed right now, it's a setback violation.
It's a new, this is like on your website, the 10-foot, the setback, is this a new?
No.
architect?
No, the sign regulations have been in place
I know
and written this way for
that,
some
but-
time.
Well, I know that we have been, for the past few years, talking about having buildings come closer to the road and have the parking come behind it.
Behind.
And he raises a great point. With that change, if he moves the sign on back on the property another, how far is it back from the property line now? 10 feet?
10 feet.
Well,
He moves
it was
it
also
back.
a very difficult site to develop from the
Right.
from the development standpoint, and they had drainage easements to the rear. They had some other issues they had to deal with the rear. So whether or not they could have designed it with it pushed further back, I can't speak to that. We did not require it to be a 20-foot. We allow for it to go up to within 20 foot of the property
It
line.
can still be there, am I
Or
correct, but smaller.
Yeah, he
So,
can,
and
well,
that's, you don't want it smaller?
Visibility wise, if I have like 2 tenants or 3 tenants, they can see it. If I make it smaller, it just makes it harder.
Well, I think that's part of the reason I'm asking about the wall signage too, because at least you have that
Right.
facing Kingston
Right.
Pike.
The
which
only
will
thing
help
with the
you.
wall sign is yes, it's great, but if someone's going up and down Kingston Pike, they're gonna see a monument sign. If you go down Kingston Pike, everyone has a monument sign. People's head is oh, they're gonna look for a monument sign instead of on the building.
But this is still gonna be, okay, compared to, visual, this one's still gonna be larger than a lot of the signs you see on Parkside. Right?
well, do you mean the ground sign?
Ground
Well,
sign, yes.
it depends on how much setback they have. Like I said, they can go, they could do 20 square feet at 10 foot of setback. And then if they can push it back a little further, they might be able to get an additional 2 square feet per sign. Again, I haven't evaluated every conceivable signage option because, when I reached out to the representative from Signco that turned in the application, to let them know that there were a couple issues with both the wall signage and this particular sign for your agenda.
So for the
Um,
wall sign, I want to bring that up too, since everyone's here. The issues that I'm having is it's a shared entrance, but I don't mind putting a door, but it doesn't make sense. You have a shared entrance. On the right, you go to the tent space. On the left, you come to mine. Why would I want to put another door right next to the vestibule and confuse people? It's okay, do I use this door or do I use the one that's in the vestibule?
That's an issue that we typically deal with wall signage, at the staff level unless we have a question. That is, I can understand that, but the way the sign regulations are written, in order to have separate tenant spaces, or in order to have separate tenant wall signs, each one of those tenants has to have a separate exclusive exterior public entrance, and,
And we
How
did-
many
and that's the
spaces
deal
are
with,
in this?
well,
Before, right? In
It,
this-
it maybe just be
Conceivably.
one or two,
But-
maybe two.
Could you put just, I mean, I know he's wanting to make sure that it's noticeable, but go back to Great Clips and put it up there. See, they have, so, this is on
wait a minute, I
Parkside.
got to switch this. Again, I didn't look to see how big the Great Clips on, the
No, I'm
larger.
just saying, this is it looks great, okay?
Right.
As far as, and you may have, like you said, one or two. It's going to be visible, even if you do have to cut your size, because look at this one right here.
Right.
You know, see what I'm saying? So, to me, I mean, you guys need to work together, and they do a great job. I know you're upset right now.
I know, but I
they
just
do-
think it should
I
be
understand.
fair. I mean, I gave
But
away 10
everybody,
feet.
the 10-foot is, it's kind of, I think it was at one time on the website. I mean, on some of the
Well,
things.
Well, I mean, the sign
Setback.
regulations are in the municipal code. They're on the website. The people who designed the buildings,
Regulations, that
Yeah.
she's asking about donating the property.
well, it's not, and it's not a uniform 10-foot. It's basically, it's the difference between, if the classification of road is a local street, and it's a 50-foot right-of-way requirement, and say there's only, there's 42 feet there, then, it would be half on one side of the road and half on the other side of the road, in terms of dedication. So, so it's not a uniform 10-foot. It's basically, it's a dedication requirement to make up one half of the substandard right-of-way standard.
His
To 10 for him.
position was that it was imposed after he had built the building.
No, sir. It was not. It was imposed as part of the planning commission site plan approval process.
Okay,
Say
that was
again?
confusing.
The dedication was part of the planning commission site plan approval process. So they did not get a building permit or a grading permit for that property until the site plan was approved and the property was
And
replatted,
that
showing that right-of-way
it was
dedication.
set back.
Yes, sir.
So that was
So-
in the plan at the
So-
time I submitted. So if someone had brought it up, I could have changed a few things at that point.
So let me ask one other question. If we, by what the recommendation is right now, is that we deny it because of its size as presented.
But you're
If
denying
that-
the
if that-
60 foot.
But if that happens,
Right.
he still has another option, right? He can
There's
request,
several options that he can talk to you
He
about.
can
variance,
redesign,
he
well,
can-
I mean, he could request a variance on.
can take it to another,
He could request a variance. Whether or not that would be successful or not would be up to the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's a separate body.
Exactly.
But he can redesign or have the sign redesigned to comply. He could also have the sign company meet with us and look at other conceivable options to put signage on that site.
I mean, the other
sure.
option I already looked into is making it smaller. That's the only option I have.
I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that the 60-foot sign is just not going to be able to be placed there?
Well, right now, it's designed at approximately 50 square foot, but,
correct.
but there's not enough setback for a sign of that size.
You can't place that size sign at that
At
spot.
that spot.
He can cut it in
move
half,
some-
or
He
Yeah.
can move it. then-
He can move it back further if that's possible.
Or have
He
two.
can reduce it in size.
But the
He
problem
might,
with moving
he
it
might be
back
able to
is the
get two
building
signs on that
obstructs it.
property there,
from the one direction.
Well, but don't you know the setbacks when you obtain the property?
Well,
And hi-
the setbacks are, the sign regulations were in place, so, I mean, I can't say whether or not the designers understood what they were when they were designing the plan, but all of these regulations pre-exist this site.
So, the designers, the architect, they have worked with the town before. You are familiar with these people,
I mean,
right? So
it-
they know.
even if they
basically-
hadn't worked with the town before, they should have read the regulations.
Right, I mean, they.
And it is the architect's job to be
Yeah,
front on that.
That is his
and-
job to do that. That's the reason I was
You're
asking
right.
you, is this a new group or something?
And-
Because it's kind of like it was on the website at one time.
And the sign company, now that, now they are showing a 20-foot dimension, they just weren't dimensioning off the right property line.
Doing.
So, and maybe they didn't understand where the property line was when they designed the sign. I can't speak for them, they're not here.
Yeah.
I just,
See, that's what I
But
was
like,
wondering.
my
because
original
that's kind of
property
like-
line, when it was surveyed, was that one. They went off that, but it was during the planning commission and all that stuff, that's when they took it back 10 feet. And that sign thing was on the drawings as well. So if they had told me like, okay, you need to take this back, we could have done something to take it back, or maybe it's smaller or something. But now I'm planning on opening in November. It's like, I need signage.
You're stuck, really.
Yeah.
And I see your point totally, and I understand completely what you're saying. I feel like we're a little bit hands tied by the regulation that we have in front of us, and that kind of guides what our course has to be. We don't have the power to change a regulation or to issue a variance on this board,
Right.
but you do have options, beyond our board. But that's sort of the way I see it, is we have to follow whatever the regulation is. And
And-
then you have options beyond that.
Yeah.
Maybe having two signs on the property. I think the separation between two signs is 100 feet, right? If
150,
it's-
I believe.
It's 150, so you can't do one on each end of the building. I don't think he has enough,
He doesn't have enough.
but he
room.
can do one up here and one down here. And I understand what you're
It's just
saying
so
about
small, I
Chato
don't need
Road, but
two. I mean, I just need one and one building sign.
Right.
And even for the
And you're
building
wanting it
sign.
right there.
Correct. I mean, that's the only spot that I could put it.
yeah.
Because I want to hide the guy that's behind me as well. I want his
Sure.
sign to be visible as well. And
And how much longer does it have to be? I'm still confused on that. What is the?
It's going to have to go down to
Just-
like
Again,
half the
you know,
size it is now.
We'd be happy to work with the sign company to look at what the different options are on that site.
Absolutely think we should work with them the best we can.
I do too,
You know,
because somehow, but that's a note to self to make sure that this will never happen again with
I
it.
mean, I'll make it I could try to make it smaller, but what about like the vestibule and all that? I think it doesn't make sense to me. Like for a building sign, I have to have like two doors. It's confusing. I'm just like,
Well, that's not on our.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't-
that's not on their
we're a little
agenda,
lost
and-
on that
and-
because we didn't, it's not before us tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
That part, or if it is,
I understand too. I understand he needs.
Although
to
that'll,
be
yeah,
appropriate.
and those are typically, wall signage is typically dealt with, administratively at the staff level, but the situation is the same there. It's we have to follow the code, and the way they designed the entranceways, and I was expecting, when I looked at the building plans, to see it partially walled off, because I thought that's what the architect was going to do until you knew what you were going to do with the other attendant spaces, and that's not the way the building plans look. If they did make those changes, and we permitted, that one wall sign, if then the vestibule was opened up, then, the sign would have to be removed, and if the regulations were still the same, and it transitioned to a building sign. So, and that's really not on the agenda for tonight, but it's again, the way the code is written, to deal with multi-tenant buildings is on like a strip center type situation. They can all have individual wall signs because they have individual doors. On a building where it's got a common entranceway, the building gets a certain amount of signage, and then they can go with a directory type sign or something like that, and that's just the way the regulations are currently written.
I think in this case, that would be one he should consider a variance on, because I see what you're saying, and I agree with that on a singular entrance, but it sounds like this one's a little different. I've seen them. It's like, you go in here and you go off to the right or
Right.
left, right? So you just got a little air, trap there, for lack of a better word, and then you can go into the others.
Again,
it's
I
hot and
mean,
cold,
you know,
but-
that would be more of an amendment, I think, than a variance, because there's, I'm not sure there would be grounds for variance, but again, that's a Board of Zoning Appeals type decision, that's not something y'all have authority to do.
I'm sorry, when you met, did you meet separately? And I mean, the thing, it sounds to me like there's some miscommunication all over the place in this, and unfortunately, you're sort of stuck in the middle. Is there a way that you can meet with the architect, the sign company, and him at the same time, so you guys can come up with a solution? I mean, all three of you, because it's almost like
Yeah, we
they
could.
didn't know
I
what
mean,
the
I
other
mean,
one
we do
was
that all the
doing, and
time.
you
That-
probably, they were the experts, and you were assuming that everything was going to
Right.
be. I think you need to be involved in the process to see what's going to make you happy.
Right, I mean, right now, I mean, I'm in the point where I'm on time crunch.
Right.
They're almost about to put everything together. I mean, they're about to put
Aside-
they ordered the door frame and everything, just to put it next to the
If
vestibule. I mean,
there's a way you can get this, if you can work with him to get this done quickly, then it will roll quickly, don't you think? I mean,
So why don't we consider doing this for you to help you out on your time crunch?
Yeah.
As the size that you are right now with the setback, we can't by regulation approve that. But the size that can be approved on this setback is, what was the square footage of that
that's
again?
what I get.
20.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the setback there would be. They didn't dimension that, and they didn't redesign to show a smaller sign. But, again, they'll be able to get, whatever setback they can achieve will dictate the size of their sign.
So could we then deny it at the size it is today, but approve an appropriate size at the appropriate setback, everything else being equal on the sign to
And you
allow
can
him to
email us
continue?
So we can-
Or,
Well, I mean, if you wanted to prove it subject to it being redesigned to comply with the size and setback requirements,
That would be good.
you could do that.
that's sort of what I'm saying. That way, at least he has something that he can go back, and if he makes the appropriate size sign, he can move on through the time
But I do
crunch.
think you need to get all three of you together with them so you can come up with something
Okay.
that you're happy with, and that you totally understand what's going on.
right.
And if you don't, just keep asking till you do.
At least that would help you keep your
'Cause
time.
we don't, I mean, it's a nice
Place.
sign, it really is,
Right.
but, and I feel like you're caught in the middle a little bit.
The only thing I would say there is if, on that motion, and, if they just redesign it, and push it, the maximum setback they can achieve, and get the appropriate size of the sign for that setback, and it's located in that general vicinity, but if they decide to go with an option of two different signs at different locations and that sort of thing, then I think we'd have to bring that back to the board.
Would have to come back,
But I
yes.
think he's wanting, yeah, we understand that too.
Yeah.
Can we approve a 20-foot sign
But
right
we-
now?
no.
It sounds like we can't approve anything.
Well, I don't know exactly what that setback would be,
Okay.
but I mean, we'll, if they meet the requirements, it'll be approved. So if it's, I mean, I don't want to say a 20-foot sign because the reality, they may be able to achieve a 13-foot setback or a 12.5-foot setback, in which case they could have greater than 20,
That'd be better.
greater than 20 square
Try to
feet.
get together this week, hopefully, you think, all of you together, and then,
I guess we've got a couple of options. I mean,
Yeah.
one option is unfortunately, we deny it the way it is, and then you reconfigure the whole thing, get it on the agenda for next month, come back, providing it all meets, we can just check that and move on. The other option is we can do what we're proposing here and try to do one subject to. That way you wouldn't have to come back and you could just move on. But that's your time
Right.
constraints. We don't know what that is. But if we do this subject to, as Bart has pointed out, there are some caveats to that, and there's a little bit of trust involved that, it'll stay really basically where it is and the square footage will just be reduced. But that's kind of where I'm looking at feedback from you as to what.
I mean, I don't plan on moving it.
so there you go, then it's a
I mean,
subject to.
it's just going to be there. I mean, the other option I already had in mind was to make it smaller if this wasn't going to work.
Push it back a little bit further without it being blocked by
larger.
part of the building, that,
Sure.
they might be able to do that, particularly on the
There's a
support
tree, and
structure.
then what the issue that I run into is then you got the Linda Heights sign. I mean, you don't want to like mix it together if I push it back too much. I mean, you got the tree in the
If-
limit.
It's on the corner of that property there.
Correct.
On the same,
If
isn't
you
it?
want to keep it where it is what, then the subject to sounds like that it would be the better, does it? So
I mean,
then you guys can work together, and then he could email us, correct? And we could.
Well, I mean, I'll update you on
Yeah.
what comes about, but
Right.
but you will have already taken action on it if they can,
Right. Subject to,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we'd
If they
still
can
like to know what's
redesign
going
and shrink
on.
it down to meet the standards, and like I said, if they decide to go with some other sort of signage option, then, then I
Well,
think we'd have to bring
It's
it
got a
back.
few subject twos.
Yeah,
One is that
yeah.
it would stay basically in the same vicinity, I mean, like right near the same pad that you've designed at this point. Another would
Kind of
be
concept.
that the Knox Valley Dental, which is on there today, would remain the way that it looks today, with the largest lettering possible in the new redesigned configuration. And that you leave enough space for the future tenants to have, they need 8-inch letters, 10-inch letters, something like that, because it's hard to see along Kingston Pike when you're going faster speeds.
Right.
So, and the reason I say is because we wouldn't have an opportunity to see it again and see what the Knox Valley Dental would look like. And normally that's something we look at is the size of the letters and the
Right.
legibility. But the way Knox Valley Dental is written, it's very legible. Block
Right.
letters and
They got
capitals and, no problem with the way that is. as
I
long
mean,
as
from
it
a matter of
stays.
scale, if it's to scale and the person is to scale, it's actually quite large lettering.
Yes, it
That
looks
would help
great.
you.
It looks great.
Okay.
All of you together, if the subject to, then you could still get on with what you're doing after you work the things
Okay.
out. What do you
Can that
think?
work for you?
Yeah, I guess that's the only option to move quicker. I mean, I don't have a choice, do I? Besides making it smaller.
From a time standpoint, you may not have a better choice, but you have other options if you want to take the time to do it.
I
So,
don't have time right now. I mean,
right. All right. Is there any other discussion?
Well, we need a motion in a second.
Right, in a second.
Okay.
That's what I'm just saying. Is there
Okay.
anything else you need to add, Bart, or?
No. So basically, it'd be a motion to approve subject to redesign to meet the size and setback requirements with the sign, remaining in the same basic location and
that
the
it
general look.
remain
The-
legible
the-
as far as the Knox Valley Dental, the same lettering. I know it won't be the same size, but a large, lettering.
Well, if as long as it was legible, I mean, if they were to redesign the look of it and take that down in size and then do like a split panel like they did out at Station West that you reviewed back in May, where they reconfigured it to like 2 rows of panels as opposed to long linear panels. I mean, I don't know if you tie them to that exact design in your motion, then that could be problematic from the way their sign designer tries to redesign it.
I don't want to tie it to the exact design. I just want them to
Make sure that it remains legible.
remains legible,
Okay.
like the same block letters and as large a lettering as can be possible in the redesigned sign.
Okay.
Same color scheme, same everything. That way, it doesn't have to come back before us to
Okay.
review that part.
We're trying to help you out.
Okay.
I know
We're
it
trying
may
to do
not
all
seem
we
like
can
it,
to
yeah.
try to help you.
okay.
Just saying, no,
Yeah.
because, yeah, this will
I'll
help.
second that.
I guess I made the motion, David has seconded. So,
So we have.
with a motion and a
get with
second,
Kim to see when all
Okay.
of you can get together,
I'll,
but you definitely need to be involved in,
all right, so
Right.
let's,
I've been involved quite a bit.
but
the
the
whole
meeting
process.
needs to be all 3 of you together to work in it, or 4, the architect, the signage person, Bart, and you.
all right, so all in favor of the motion and the second, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
You're so good.
Okay, so last item on our agenda. Mark, are you finished writing over there?
I got it.
All right, you ready? Okay.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're going to, we're looking at appointing our next youth representative
You don't get to
for the
stay.
next year.
Going to college.
You graduated, right?
Go to college.
Congratulations, that's great. And you're going to UT? Is that right? You're going,
Sure, we didn't have a meeting last month, and, yeah. So
Do what now?
I just remember we didn't have a meeting last month, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So you're
right.
Went to
UT.
UT, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, congratulations
Well,
on
we've
that.
enjoyed this very much, you being on, and I'm really glad that you were here.
And we wish you great success at UT and everything else you're going to get into.
Thank you.
Do you have a plan? You have a major yet?
I'm thinking supply chain right now with a minor in international business.
Nice, nice. Do you already speak other languages that you're
A
heading
little
to?
Spanish.
A little Spanish, okay.
That'll be helpful, no matter what we do.
That's right, that's right. Well, good. Well, congratulations on all that. So we have Miss Lillian Scott, who is, I believe, Concord Christian School, who has applied for possibly being on the VRRB. And it appears, Bart, that this is our only option this go around?
Yes, sir, that's what we had in terms of the VRB.
Okay, so
We're the first choice.
there we are.
It
It does. Well, I read everything, and she certainly appears to be a good candidate. Absolutely, and so I have no issue with appointing her to our board. Anybody else have any comments?
You?
No issues.
Well, then I guess what we need is a motion on the appointment of Ms. Lillian Scott as our youth representative. Do we have a motion?
Motion to appoint.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So will she be able to start next month? Will that be
I'll
So,
either I or Mark will reach out to her and we'll, kind of brief her on the meetings. We'll get her, a copy of the regulations. We typically try to schedule a sit-down meeting with new people and go over sort of the responsibilities of the board and the way the meetings work and that sort of thing. So we'll try to schedule a meeting like that prior to the next meeting.
is she going to be on both? Is she going to be on her first choice too?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
I think this is it.
I thought maybe that she was going to do both, since her photography.
So I can provide just a 2-second, we had our first sign meeting
Oh,
this month, and it was mostly kind of introductory, and there are several good candidates on there, good people that are on the deal, so I think it's going to be beneficial, and Shipley went through the cause and the impacts and the rules that the Supreme Court passed that are requiring us to redo this, and gave us homework to go out and drive through different properties and look at the signs and look how the content is impacted. So, and it's not a yes vote. It's a definite, their opinions on it, on the individuals on that have strong opinions about everything, not just the content. So I think it will be, we'll see how, but anyway, we did have a meeting. We got one on the 7th of August, and we'll follow up.
that's
So
cute.
you'll be able to report in August about that meeting then.
How
All right,
nice.
Good.
Did you notice? Strong opinion.
Strong opinions.
See, I
good.
don't mind a strong opinion as long as you can still look at the other side of the.
And there were a couple of members weren't able to be there, so there'll probably be even more strong opinions next time.
So
Well-
when is this, the next meeting?
The 7th of August,
And where do y'all meet? Here?
we do.
Yeah.
We met up at that table last time.
And it is an open public meeting, and we invite, the press and also, other people are welcome to come if they want
I love it.
to observe.
Need more strong opinions.
That's it.
right?
In
But,
a group like this, if you don't have opinions and different opinions, it's really
Yeah.
not worth anything.
Yeah.
It's just.
But I
Exactly.
still like seeing other people's side of the story instead of just keeping.
Also, I'd note that I didn't think about it until after I already put out the agenda, but we'll have to elect officers
Thinking it was this
for the coming year. I mean, typically we would have done it this month, but it wasn't on the agenda. If you want to wait till next month,
Well, we talked earlier, we've been doing it in August most years, so.
and we
that's
got a
pretty
couple
normal.
members that aren't here tonight, and
Yeah.
so
Are we going to have, you will let us know whenever you decide to do pictures ahead of time, so, or is this gonna be, we're gonna elect officers and do pictures that next month too? Just let us know.
I have no idea. I usually get handed a camera or, hey, can you take these pictures for the town's website? So I don't exactly know when that'll come up.
August, September, October, I don't know when if we even need
You
it
never
or
know.
not.
You never know.
We would like some notice though, if you know, so we can.
Next meeting, I'll be out of town.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, yeah. Speaking of not making it.
Interested in being an officer?
That's what I was
Elected
I don't
asking.
think I
officer?
need to be. I mean, we have a good
Okay.
officer.
Oh, we
Well,
have,
appreciate
And we got
We
other
have-
candidates, so there are plenty of candidates.
Okay.
and,
so you're,
I'm already subscribed with
okay, that's what we wanted to
the
know.
sign commission, so that will keep me busy.
All right.
Okay, so we just wanted to kind
Well,
of know that.
Marty's president for life as far as.
Yeah, he is. We're not going to change his
Because he's
thing.
so good at it.
We can already
Well, I
put him there
appreciate your
today.
support.
You're already reelected.
Already reelected, okay. All right, well, Bart, anything else on that